Hello, this is the Inspiring Minds with Blissful Botanicals, where we holistically seek the truth in life using our entrepreneurial spirit. I'm your host, JR Knopp. Okay, everybody, I'm here with Alana. She's got a very interesting situation going on, and why don't you jump in and tell us who you are and what you're about and what you're about to do.
Sure. So, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm Alana, like you said. I'm a holistic mental health therapist, and I kind of have a lot of slashes on my title name now. But my main gig is the therapy. And when I say holistic therapy, I mean we take a very mind, body, spirit, environment, culture, community approach. So, like everything from your specific day to day life to what's going on in the world obviously impacts your mental and emotional health. Everything, going back to childhood, even before that, looking at intergenerational patterns. I also very much like to get to the root of things. So, if you're experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression or even ADHD, let's figure out what's at the root of that. Because often it's not just a symptom that's coming out of nowhere that we just medicate. We need to figure out what's actually beneath that and how that might connect with other emotional issues, trauma, physical health issues. Those all interconnect. And it's a very like interactive process. So I'm very much an active therapist, whereas like a lot of therapists might just sit there and have someone vent for an hour and just kind of call it a day, or might skim the surface, kind of just scratch on like the symptoms like I was talking about. So I find that being able to dig a little bit deeper is more effective. And I also really emphasize like the empowerment piece. So like you're the expert on your own life. We just have to give you the tools to figure out how to be the expert. So that's my main thing, the one-on-one client therapy. And since then, since moving to Miami a couple of years ago and having already done therapy for a few years, I've expanded now, offering in-person workshops, events. So that might range from like an EFT tapping workshop, which is my favorite somatic tool that I use with my clients as well, to yoga, meditation, journaling, etc. And I also plan to open a holistic center here in Miami, which we'll get into more detail about. But that's some of what I'm doing. I also have like a matcha company aside from that. So that's why I say there's a lot of slashes. But for the purpose of today, I think we'll mainly be talking about the therapy and holistic wellness.
Okay. I like that. I honestly kind of just a little bit of my perspective of what you were saying of I believe a lot of modern medicine chases symptoms. They never get to the root causes of anything. And they're always just slapping a band-aid per se on it and here, hope you feel better, but they don't want you ever to be cured or find out what's really causing it. And I think something like what you're talking about, I think is more prevalent. It's what I would hope doctors would aspire to be instead of what they are nowadays. And in my perspective, it just seems like they're taught to, you have this symptom, here's this drug for it. You have this symptom, here's this drug for it. And they don't really get to root causes of like what you were saying. Is it intergenerational? What went on in your childhood? What are you doing right now dietarily that could be leading to some of the ailments that you're having or some of what's going on? I mean, it's all the stomach and the mind and everything in your body is so interconnected. And some people overlook that and realize that what you're putting in your body could be causing a lot of the mental anguish that you're facing on a daily day basis. Is that
Yeah.
kind of but right on par of what it is or?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you're spot on in that it's symptom management, right? And I think that, we can get kind of into the whole rabbit hole of like why that is, why we have these
Mm-hmm.
systems that function the way they do in the US. And obviously, people are profiting from people staying sick, but it's
Mm-hmm.
frustrating because as someone who's like been like forced through the shuffle between doctors. Oh, you have this symptom. You need to go see this other specialist. I don't specialize in that. And kind of like breaking you down into these parts as though you're not one whole person with one whole body. And so that's part of my approach. But even kind of speaking to like that systemic part is I've talk to doctors that they actually do care and they want to have more of that approach, but they're also forced into the system where they have too many clients on their caseload. They're forced to, reduce their sessions or appointments down to a specific amount of time. They're forced by insurance companies to give a certain diagnosis. I know even for me, when I was taking insurance, I also had to be within that system, which is why I prefer just to do out of pocket or out of network. But it's frustrating because I feel as though this whole system is just trying to kind of break us down and burn us out so that we don't even have the time and energy to ask these questions like, what is at the root of it? Because again,
Hmm.
when you have knowledge about that and you're tapped into the intuition of your own body, your own well being, that is empowering. There's a reason they don't want us to be
Yes.
empowered.
No, you're 100% correct. I mean, in my perspective, most people need to look within before they can heal what's going on in the outer surface. And 100% correct on the insurance. And I've talked to other doctors on the podcast and in real life, and been through different ailments. Me and the medical profession have its odds. They've misdiagnosed many different things that should have been just very simple to do. But like you said, they're under time constraints. They're saying, "Hey, you got to operate because these insurance companies are putting the pressure on." And I mean, we got to get back to the root of all that. But I mean, there's major changes that need to be done in this whole medical situation throughout the US. We are the sickest, most overpay. I mean, we overpay for medical procedures as it is, the highest in the world. Yet we're still maintaining the most sickest nation out of the world too. So it's like I thought we are supposed to be the best. I thought all of this was supposed to be we're good, but and it's like no, it's kind of the opposite. And I won't say 100%, but I want to say a lot of it's profit driven. And then the others, if I get into my tinfoil hat, is yeah, I think there is a certain level of people that don't want people to come together and like what you're saying, they want you to be busy and not thinking about what's actually going on and actually focus on what can actually change people's lives or what would actually benefit everybody as a whole versus just this narrow group at the top.
Yeah.
But
And, if we wanted to get really deep, we could kind of uncover like what is even at the root of that. And I have a few theories. I feel like Western society in general is a lot more individualistic. So even us kind of having these lives where we're focused on ourselves as an individual, it separates us from that connectedness, that kind of systemic
mhm.
unity that we're talking about, even within our own like bodily systems. Even if we look at like Descartes and dualism, like the mind separate from the body, I mean, there's so many different parts of Western history that have created like this system that we're in. But you're right, there's so many other systems that kind of reinforce that and uphold it. And obviously, this capitalistic society that we're in, it's just creating more and more of a divide. But fortunately, I think people are A, waking up to the fact that that is problematic, and B, starting to do something about it and seeking out alternatives. I know for me, I've had a lot of clients that have come to me saying that they're really tired of the old way of therapy, or they've had a lot of similar experiences that you and I have had of being shuffled between doctors and feeling like, I know something is wrong. I know that there's something more than what you're telling me there is, and I really want to get to the root of it. And even though I'm not a doctor, I'm not a naturopath, I don't tell them like I'm the expert on this, but I have enough perspective to at least tell them like, A, if your intuition's telling you that there's something else going on, you should trust that. And B, you can get all these like blood work results saying that you're fine. And there could very much be a lot of problems there because Western medicine is only looking at like these extreme ranges of you're either like about to die because you're so deficient or you're about to die because you have way too much of something. There's like
Hmm.
such a wide range in between that points to dysfunction, not necessarily disease. And I think because so many of us are in that huge range of dysfunction, like you're saying, we're just walking around like not dying, but we're sick, we're not well. And it just reflects in the way that we feel mentally, physically, emotionally, the way that we're interacting with each other. I think we can very much see how broken down our like communication and connection has
Hmm.
become, and it's all connected, right? And I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
that any of this is a coincidence. So even though that kind of can get overwhelming to think about, and it definitely can be overwhelming even for me, let alone having to kind of reassure my clients, I think being able to like even just talk about it like today on this podcast, or talk about it with a client, like with a friend, write a Substack post, like just at least bringing awareness little by little is going to start making more and more people wake up.
Oh yeah, no, 100. We need to. Everybody needs to have more conversations about this because we're like you're saying, we all are connected. They've even done studies, and I think they've even called it like the 100 monkey study, where subconsciously we all transmit and talk between each other. We're all connected on a different level that most of us, and there's very few that really understand it. But they've done studies where they've like just an instance like the New York Times crossword puzzle. There's avid crossword solvers that want to be the first to do it because it's the hardest. After a few people have done it, it gets easier and easier throughout the day. And they actually did a study on that. But we've kind of gotten away with that in Western culture. It's more, and like what you're saying, individualistic. It's not, you're off on an island. They want you on an island. They want you firewall behind a computer screen. Don't talk or interact with anybody. And God forbid, don't go outside and touch grass or see the sunlight. I mean, that could be poison for you the way they make it seem. And it's just like
Right.
that's the best thing you could do is just go sit in Mother Nature, touch the ground, be outside, see the sky. And I worry about people in like really big cities where they're just you never see any of that. And it's like I can see why you're so miserable just from the outside, but when you're in the thick of it, you don't realize it. When you're in the forest, you don't see through the trees. You kind of just there and you just don't know and you walk around not realizing there's such better feelings and paths you can be going down instead of this kind of miserable, lonely, separated, like just being your own little bubble type situation. It seems like culture has been pushing us towards. But I think there's also a great awakening happening as well because there's more and more people having conversations where I always seemed like the crazy one 15, 20 years ago talking about this. And now it's like people are like, oh, yeah, yeah, let me hear more about that. What are you actually talking about? Instead of, oh, you're the crazy kook. Come on. That's woo woo science. Go get out of here with that. That don't, all right, you do you. I
Yeah.
just let it go. But is that kind of what kind of got you into this? What inspired you to go down and start your own business like this?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think a lot of people have, maybe not a lot, but some people have had a similar experience of being introduced to this whole world of consciousness and wellness through psychedelics. And for me, it
Hmm.
was beginning of college. I went to school in Boston, and Boston is like such a cool place to go to college because it's a city, but there's a lot of green space. It's very walkable, and there's a ton of college students. So it's very easy to just like have a huge network of people that you're friends with, acquaintances with, outside of your own like insular college network. And
Hmm.
I didn't go to a tiny school, but it wasn't a huge school either. And it was kind of in the middle of the city. So for me, it was really easy to start making this network. But the first experience I had, I think I was in like the Boston Commons garden, so outside. And I just remember having this like weird out of body experience where I'm looking at like, what's there, what's in the present moment, but I'm imagining it as like when the first settlers were there before all of Newbury Street, all the shops, all of like, all the people with like their modern like material things, phones, etc., and just thinking like how like nothing matters, not in a nihilistic way, but like, okay, these
Sure.
material things don't hold meaning. And I even remember, I think it was a different day, but I was in the park also on psychedelics, and I think I was hula hooping or something, just really like enjoying the day, being carefree. And it was like one of those first nice days of spring, which, as
Oh.
living somewhere cold, they're like hypnotic.
Oh
you
yeah,
can't you
100%,
can't not be
100%.
like in the moment. And I just remember seeing this guy, he was like pushing his child in a stroller, and he was like just glued to his phone. And mind you, this was like 2010. So this is even before like social media.
Yeah, that's yeah,
Glued to
wow.
his phone. And then suddenly he looks up like he just realized that he was at the park. And obviously anyone can get that sucked into their phone, but because I was like in this kind of different mindset, it just made me even more conscious of like how disconnected we were. And again, this was already like 15 years ago. So just like back to back having experiences like that of like seeing this kind of different perspective, opening my mind, going to a lot of different concerts, music festivals, different experiences in different places, meeting all types of different people, seeing of course like the dark side of like this kind of lifestyle and people taking it to the extreme and using psychedelics to like escape and
Hmm.
numb out and in a very like not healthy, not productive way. But for me, I always kind of saw it as like experimenting and expanding my mind. So that was like the gateway for me. But at some point in college, I was studying psychology. I was taking classes on consciousness and meditation, which is so cool that they offer that at my school. And I
Yeah.
started meditating, I started practicing yoga. And so, towards that end of that year, I knew I was going to be studying abroad. And so, I didn't want to get locked up abroad, taking drugs and, getting involved with sketchy people. So, I had
Sure.
planned already that like I was going to have my last hurrah that summer and then cut out all the psychedelics and other stuff I was doing. And during that study abroad, I started doing yoga regularly. I was meditating every day. So, by the time I came back from that semester, I had transitioned from like the psychedelics to more of the spiritual aspect. And I also had felt that since the gate was open, like I didn't need to keep doing psychedelics. Like it almost kind of handicaps you because it limits the type of experience you can have. Whereas when you're just using your own mind and your own body and your own consciousness and that connection that you foster on your own, there's no limit, right? And so I really
Hmm.
began to dive into that. And it was actually at that point that I came up with the idea for the Holistic Center. So it's been almost 13 years that I've had this idea. And
Nice.
along the way, I've kind of like meandered a lot. So I went directly to grad school studying social work. I had intended to be a therapist. And then after my first year, I went through a lot of life changes. I'd broken up with the ex. I moved from LA to San Diego. I took a year
Ooh.
off school and I got back to school and I realized like I wasn't feeling this mental health clinical concentration anymore. One of the things that really turned me off was like we were saying, like this kind of pathologization of mental health and like the diagnosis and just all of like the ways that insurance kind of boxes you in. And I was starting to get more interested in like this global perspective, nonprofits, and kind of that interconnectedness. So I did end up graduating with my concentration in that and intending to work in nonprofits, but that kind of didn't go as planned. So I circled back to getting licensed and becoming a therapist. And that worked out well because I was able to kind of bring that other perspective and experience into being a therapist. And it was like
Hmm.
more of a well rounded approach. But I definitely feel like every part of my journey of like everything from the psychedelics to these like
Sure.
failed jobs in the macro social work field, they all have shaped my perspective, as well as all my travel experiences, all the different places I've lived as an adult. And I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of therapists and just a lot of practitioners in general don't live their lives as much as they should be. And so their perspective is limited by their own
Hmm.
lives. And I think, not to toot my own horn, but like, I don't think that I would be as much of an expert in what I do if I hadn't done so much of my own exploring.
Oh, 100%. I'm right there with you. I mean, I'm an avid, used to be and still out there, but not at the levels that I used to back in the day, right out of college and everything. But I love going to concerts. I think honestly, personally, everybody should do some mushrooms, but go out in Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Tools can be used in very bad ways or very good ways. And I've seen, like what you're saying, both sides of people going to the extreme with psychedelics and then people using it in such a way that is so beneficial and therapeutic and it opens their eyes and you don't need to do it all the time and it's you can have just one or two experience and that could be enough to see beyond the veil is what I'm calling, and I think with psychedelics it allows you to peek up the veil and realize there's a lot more going on out in the universe than there is that what we can see in front of us. And I
Yeah.
think that has expanded a lot of people throughout history, I think, honestly. And I think there's even some books like The Mushroom and the Cross where they've even gone back to maybe the start of Christianity becoming from psychedelic experiences. The Akashe bush actually giving off a DMT type experience. And I find those very fascinating because I've been in those states and I can see kind of what they're talking about. And it's like, yeah, what if that was how things really started? Like, makes you wonder. I'm not saying I know anything or a great theologist or anything. It's just an interesting perspective of like, what if that was? What if somehow, we started little micro doses off of cow patties and stuff they found in the fields after rain, and eventually it expanded and our consciousness to where we're at today. And I think we've kind of regressed from that because of, like what you're saying, technology. And it drives me nuts. Concerts from 10 years ago, everybody was in tune. You didn't have it. Nowadays, you go to concert, everybody's got their phone up, and it's like, you're at the show. You don't need to look through the phone to be at
Right.
the, just be at the show. Put the phone down, dance a
I
little.
mean, imagine trying to crowd surf in a crowd of phones.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it, but back in the day, oh my gosh, yeah, that's a wild experience too. But I mean, I just don't think people are interconnected anymore, and people are more behind computer screens and their phones out in public, like you're saying, going to the park. You go walk around the park, and like I guarantee right now, there's, well, not where I'm at, but where you're at, most of the people are on their phones, walking their kid or walking their dog, facing
Even
the
when I
phone.
go to the beach, like walking along the water, I'm like, are you joking? You can't put it down for 10 minutes.
You're at the beach. Good God. Yeah, I don't get to the ocean very much, so usually for about the first 10 minutes, I just stare there because I don't. You just
Even
realize
me.
how small you are. You're just like,
I live 5 minutes from the beach, and anytime I go, I plant myself right in front of the ocean. My phone is away. Maybe I'll check it a couple times if I need to, but like I'm not on it. This is my sacred connecting with nature, grounding with my feet in the
mm.
sand time.
Oh, it's so beautiful down there too. I love the ocean, but I mean, I feel the same way going out into the trees or out into a forest or just
Yeah.
out in the green grass, just in the backyard. If you don't have that, and like I said, I feel bad for people living in these big cities that never get to touch Mother Nature, and they're just compact all day long. So what inspired you? You said you'd been in Miami for the last 2 years. What inspired to move there versus it sounded like you were out in San Diego?
Yeah. So I had moved out to the West Coast from Boston, of course, because of the weather. And for school, naively, I thought USC was such a good school. And if I got in, I must be really smart. And now I'm super in debt, which is a whole other story.
Yep.
um, but once I was out there, I realized I really liked California. Now I feel like some of my political views don't necessarily align with all of California's. I think there's a lot of extremism on both sides, which that's a whole other
Hmm.
podcast we want
Oh
to
yeah,
discuss.
no, yeah, that's a deep podcast there, but yes.
Yeah, but at the time, of course, my nature loving hippie self was so excited to be out there. There was more of a spiritual community, yoga community. So it was
Hmm.
really aligned for me, and I loved living out there. Unfortunately, my relationship I was in was not so aligned, so that's why I ended up in San Diego. And for me, my experience in San Diego was what I kind of was hoping LA would be, and that I was literally 3 blocks from the beach. So I was at the ocean every single day, which was amazing. There's so much nature in San Diego that I really miss here because I feel like we only get really like one type of nature, which is like beach and palm trees. And don't get me wrong, I love that, but I mean, where else in the world can you go hiking, surfing, biking, rock climbing, like all outside, all within like 20, 30 minutes and like whenever you want? So I definitely miss that kind of like adventurous side of nature in San Diego and living somewhere that I could kind of walk around to anywhere. The reason I left San Diego was not that I like didn't like it, but because as I had been ready to graduate and enter the job force, like I said, I was interested in nonprofits. So I moved back to DC where I grew up, since that's obviously like where a lot of nonprofits are. And the chapter I had in DC kind of stretched out a lot longer than expected. COVID happened. My dad got sick. He ended up passing from cancer. So all in all, I think the timing worked out the way it was meant to. But I had been wanting to move down here to Miami for a while because, first of all, I just love the weather. I love that it's warm year round. The water's warm year round. I love that it's closer to home, so flying back and forth to DC is a lot easier. I feel like it has a lot of like the culture that San Diego was lacking. I feel like if you were to combine San Diego and LA, that might kind of get you somewhat close to what Miami is, but Miami, of course, just has its like own flavor. So there's a lot of things I love
Hmm.
about Miami, and it's interesting, like moving back to DC after being in California for 4 years. In a lot of ways, it felt like a regression because DC and the East Coast, and honestly, a lot of like cities like that, I think have a very like linear thinking inside the box type mentality. And it's like not just individuals, it's like the whole culture where they kind of feel like, you go to school, you go to college, you graduate, you meet your partner, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, and then that's it. Like maybe you go on some cool vacations, but like you're staying in the box. Like don't color outside the lines. And to be an entrepreneur, to be a creative, to be someone that's into spirituality and wellness, like it's not that it's frowned upon, it's just not the mainstream. And I think being able to come down here, it's almost like this trajectory I was on in San Diego kind of like I jumped back to a sort of a timeline I was on in a way, but in a new way, obviously 10 years ahead and with all the experience I had during that time. So Miami for me is like San Diego 2.0, but like different, if that makes
I
sense.
see it.
A
No,
lot of
it makes total sense. I haven't been to Miami.
Okay,
No,
you should
I
definitely
haven't
move
been to Miami yet. I've been to Fort Lauderdale. I went to Tampa, spent some time in Tampa. I've been to San Diego and LA. And the last time I was in San Diego, LA was probably about 10, 15 years ago. But it
there.
was a lot different compared to what I hear because I still got a good friend that lives out in Orange County. And
Mhm.
he tells me it's been a different ballpark from when he moved out there 15 years ago. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of like what you said. And I think also getting back to kind of the East Coast thing, I think there's just like a brain sync. It's like when you get around enough people, it's like you all start thinking in the same way, and it's just like and it's hard because if you go against it, it's like you said, you're the outcast. You're not like frowned upon, but you're still just kind of the outcast. You don't fit
Fringe. Yeah.
into their mold that they're trying to put everybody into. And
Yeah.
I could definitely see Miami being, yeah, I definitely need to get down to Miami. It sounds like a good time.
Well, so there's kind of like a good side and a bad side to it here because on the plus side, obviously the weather here is very conducive to a healthy lifestyle. People, love their Pilates classes, love running, love being outside, love the beach. And it's very easy to kind of be in that lifestyle. And there's a lot of places to go for healthy food. There's a lot of places with outdoor seating, which I love. I think it's just,
Mhm.
it's kind of like that vacation feel. There are a ton of entrepreneurs here. There's a ton of people
Mhm.
who are doing stuff that is very creative, very outside of that mold. And so I feel like it gives me a lot of energy and motivation and kind of like that hustle feeling. But also, there's a downside to that because even though, yes, it seems on the surface like it's just perma vacation, I just feel like I'm on all the time. Like I'm
Yeah.
constantly hustling to the next thing. I cannot even tell you how many wellness events there are here every single day, every week. There are now a million like matcha companies as well. Suddenly that became the big thing, which I'm like, I've been on matcha for 8 years. I've been way before y'all. So there's an oversaturation of the wellness like community, the industry is what I'm trying to say. And I think
Hmm.
on the one hand, like again, it's good because it's kind of increasing the availability and that will bleed out into other communities as well. Obviously, as a business owner, it creates competition, so that can be stressful sometimes. But what I also see is that not even that there is a little bit of a dark side to it because we all know like Miami's history with the Coke industry and kind of building upon that. But I think it's also very like superficial still. I think a lot of people are getting into the wellness for like how they look and trying to look younger, trying to be hot. Everyone wants to be hot in Miami. Everyone is outside. Everyone's like in bikinis all the time. So of course you have to keep up. But I think that we are getting to the place where people want more. People want something deeper. And so the idea with this holistic center is that it's not just a fitness center. It's not just a beautiful space to get, luxury spa services and, cute cafe or whatever. Like I really want there to be offerings where people are like, oh, if I get acupuncture and balance out my meridians, or if I go to this holistic naturopath and figure out the root cause of some of the things that maybe are causing like my eyes to have dark circles, like maybe I can get to the root of things. And maybe if I sit in this meditation room for a while, like I won't need to go spend more time on my phone, or whatever it may be, like just having all these things in one place, allowing people to really kind of drop into that kind of sense of like connectedness to themselves, and then having it also serve as a bit of a community center to connect to each other. I haven't seen anything at the scale and like concept of what I have in mind. So I'm really hoping that I can get it, in building process soon so I
I
get to
I
go first.
I think you can. I think I've seen what you're talking about up in Denver. I think it's recently something similar out there, and I think it's I'm gonna age myself a little bit, but it reminds me of going back to the malls back in the day when people used to actually go to the mall, and sometimes it wasn't just there to shop; it was to hang out and do something like that. And I think, like, I see what you're talking about is when you can bring all those businesses under one center and have it be a destination place. You come to the cafe, you come hang out, and then you start, like you said, you come for acupuncture and you find a yoga class, or you start asking more questions. And I think being in that same facility of like, oh, go talk to this person, this will actually help you out. Oh, you're having mental issues here, go talk with this person, we got a great class coming up over here. I think it's a great idea. I mean, do you got a spot picked out for it, or how far along in the process are you?
So I have a location like in Miami where I want it to be. It's called Little River, and it's kind of like an up and coming area. There's a lot of new development there. It historically has been more of like either like warehouses or empty lots. It's sort of like mixed residential as
Perfect.
well, and it's next to Little Haiti, so it's still currently more of like a low income area. But for me, that's kind of intentional because aside from the fact that it's up and coming, so it'll be easier to kind of build into that area, I want there to be that accessibility piece where it's not like on South Beach and you have to have a fancy car and valet it to get these services. I want someone who maybe needs to take the bus and they can just show up, and we have free or low cost services that they're able to access, and subsidized services. I want to partner with nonprofits. Like, I really think that the people who need these services the most are the ones that don't have access to it. So, obviously, it's going to be a
Oh,
for
I like
profit
that.
business.
I
There's
like
going to
that.
be, different tiers of membership available, kind of like a members co working space. Like, it will appeal to like all ranges of people, but it's very important to me that there is this accessibility piece to it as well.
Yeah. No, I've seen like in Denver, they took a lot of the old factories and warehouses and then started converting them into residentials and businesses and really revitalizing the space. And that's good and bad because I've heard both sides of it being in real estate, how, but I think you're right. I think the people that need it the most ain't the super rich. They pretty much already have it, and they don't. It's the everyday Joe that's grinding and trying to
Yeah.
get by, who's living maybe paycheck to paycheck, that don't want to go to the doctor but knows there's something wrong but don't trust the doctors because, like, for me, an instance, I've been misdiagnosed several times, and it just, you lose trust after that, and it's just like I don't want
Exactly.
to. But yeah, it sounds very so it sounds like it's still in the ground level. Do you got some investors, or do you got an open date, or is it still just kind of the need to find the right spot and then still putting the pieces together?
So, I mean, I have like the whole business plan laid out, but I'm really just looking for investors. So, obviously, me coming on here is building exposure for that. I think
Hmm.
probably realistically and like strategically, what will happen first is renting out like a smaller space where I could start practicing therapy out of, maybe hire like a couple practitioners of some of these things like in-house in that small space, maybe start hosting some of my events there as we kind of build
Mhm.
into the bigger space. Because what I'm envisioning is a space that's very like biophilic, organic feeling, kind of like Tulum meets Morocco, and it will
Ooh.
just feel like an oasis. So I think that for me, because I've had this idea for so long and because I'm very like particular about how I do everything, I want to take time building it exactly how I'm envisioning it. I don't want to cut corners. I want to make sure that we're using, both organic and recycled materials. Like I don't want to cheap out. And so I want to make sure that it takes as long as it needs to get to that, meaning we're going to have something already in operation as that's being built. So probably that will be the first or next step, and obviously I'm going to need some investment for that as well. So we're still in the planning phase. Unfortunately, I don't have an opening date, but I'm always posting updates about that on my page. I also have on my TikTok and Instagram, I have like a carousel where you can see like exactly what I have in mind and some
Oh, nice.
vision board type pictures. So you can see the idea of what it will look like.
Well, I mean, keep at it. And I grew my business. What we're going into, what is it? About 11 years of being in business now.
So,
And I didn't go and get a big investor. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying you have to go so far in debt to start a new business. And some of them it does. I mean, to expand, I'm not saying all of it, but I find it better when you can home grow it yourself, keep the control, not have to put the stress and the panic of I just took out this massive loan, so we have to produce. And I think that's where people like small business owners start cutting corners because you're trying to pay back this loan and you're panicked about it. And if things ain't working out 100% the way it was out the gate, the way you envisioned it, which 98% of the time it never does, you can go in with the perfect plan and trust me, you're going to walk out with your head in your hand going, it didn't happen the way I thought. I think that's number one in just running any business, small business owner. But to do it in a smaller, more controlled way, I think is more beneficial. You got to have the patience, and that's the tough part, especially when you have the vision in your head and you're just like, I want to do it now. I want to jump into it now. I want this to go now. Takes time. You got to take a couple of breaths and just go, okay, what steps? And I think you got the right idea. Do it in steps. Find your steps. How I think was the old adage go, how do you eat a whale? You don't do it all at once. You do it bite by bite. You can't. And so I think that's also some of the bad product of the ADD now generation, that we seem to find instant gratification. It's like, we need it now. I need it now. But that's good. So you said you started a matcha. How what's going on with that? When did you start that, and how's that going?
So I was just gonna say, I feel like it kind of is insane that I started another business on my own while still kind of building this other one, but it also like helps me be more patient because it gives me something else to focus on. And it's not like they're totally unrelated. So like I
Oh
could
no.
find an investor for the holistic center through my matcha pop-ups,
Oh
but
yeah.
it started earlier this year, and it didn't start initially as like a pop-up service. I was trying to plan an event for my Soul Space Holistic Wellness business, which I did ultimately end up doing a couple months ago. But I was having trouble finding a venue, and I was just getting really frustrated because I had, this whole idea of what I wanted to do, and I was really excited to host. And I just felt like this one piece that was like blocking me from doing it was really frustrating me. So I got the idea randomly to start like a meetup group for women that like matcha and mocktails, and also give an opportunity to discuss like mental health topics. So initially I had done a couple meetups like that where we just met at a cafe, everyone ordered their own drinks and we just sat, and it was like not quite as formal as group therapy obviously, but I did facilitate some discussion around mental health, self-care, wellness, all that kind of stuff, and I did enjoy it. But I found that like it was hard to get people to commit to something free, which seems like an oxymoron, but there's just not as much of a commitment when you're not invested in
Yeah.
something. And then randomly, it was like a couple weeks after I'd become a full-time entrepreneur focusing on this holistic wellness business that someone reached out that she was hosting an event, like a Pilates event, and she wanted me to serve matcha at her event. And my first reaction was like, why do you think I do that? I've never posted that. And immediately I was like, well, why not? Like, I
Yeah.
have a brand, I have experience making matcha. All I need to do is like, I have a table, I just need to order some cups, and that's pretty much it. So I just made it happen. And I will say that that first one, I did take a risk and I did offer it without getting paid. And obviously, that was like an investment because I had to pay for the supplies. But from there, I got a lot of exposure and I did end up getting a lot of opportunities from that. And then pretty quickly, it turned into something where there was like a lot of demand for it. So now it's like a
Nice.
full-fledged business. I just built like a, well, I didn't build it, but I customized a wooden matcha bar cart that someone built for me. It's
Oh,
very
nice.
cute, it's very pink, and I'm very excited to start doing more like paid gigs where I come serve matcha. So there's a lot of opportunity there, like I said, with all the wellness events that happen, even private events. I've done bachelorette parties. I'm going to be doing a holiday party next week at a synagogue, like, just random
Oh,
things where
nice.
people want matcha because people love matcha. But even that, like, as someone who's been drinking matcha for so long, I think it's easy for me to get into that kind of hipster mentality of like, oh, everyone likes it now, it's ruined. But I think even aside from it benefiting me as a business owner, I think what we're seeing is people realize like being burnt out on coffee, burning out your adrenals, having constant anxiety, it's not fun. Nobody likes
No,
that. And
no.
I can't even drink coffee because of like gut issues that I have. So that's why I drink matcha so much. I think a lot of people also have gut issues. And even if they're not realizing it, even if their motivation is just that it's like cute and trendy, people want to keep drinking something where they feel less anxious, where they feel more calm. They can still get that alertness, but without the crash. They don't feel like their stomach is being turned inside out all the time. And obviously, as we know, the gut brain connection, you're going to get less anxiety, less depression, less like rage and irritability when your gut is more calm. So I'm
Sure.
glad that we're kind of shifting towards that. But it doesn't hurt that also I have a business where I can benefit from it as well.
No, that's amazing. That's how most small businesses start. It's you find a need and then it expands on from there. I mean, and to go back, I actually had to quit drinking coffee. Oh, it's been about 3, 4 months now because I've had a lot of TBIs or concussions over the years. I've played college football and motocross racing and growing up just as a pure gladiator at some moments in time, it feels like. Uh, Coffee started and special caffeine started really throwing me into migraines and headaches. Matcha, I actually do. That's one of the few things I can still drink and do enjoy. But I think it's just like, to me, it was like when I finally stopped drinking coffee, you see how much coffee is everywhere in our culture and society. You look on TV, I mean, there's coffee shops everywhere you go, and that instant jolt, and then the crash, and then, like you said, the sour gut, and and it sucks because I feel like a lot of people are trapped because they don't know anything better. And I think that matcha is, I think that's why it's gaining in popularity so much is because people are realizing. And the other one I'm hearing a lot about is like a mushroom coffee in a sense. Like instead of like coffee, it's more of a combination of different mushrooms put into like a tea or a coffee form. And people are really finding benefit in that. But I'm right there with you. I've had to stop caffeine, and that's been one of the toughest things I've had to do because I'm just so used to having a cup of coffee in the morning and about the midday crash having another cup of coffee, and then before you
Yeah.
know it, yeah, it's definitely. And then no, I totally get the starting many different businesses. I mean, our primary business is Kratom here with Blissful Botanicals, but I'm actually launching a new line here next week called Zook. And Zook's a natural tallow moisturizer. It's a beef tallow with beeswax and jojoba oil and shea butter, and I've got a great combination, and it's just a way better moisturizer for your hands and face than any of the other products out there with like the parabens and everything else. And it's totally different from what I'm doing, but it's kind of in the same realm of like my goal is being botanical and holistic because it's more of a natural, pure way of moisturizing your body than that. And it's tough. You're right. It helped me focus on the other business, like having multiple things. So I'm guessing telling people out there, don't be afraid. Follow a dream. If you got an intuition to go one way, explore it. Never, don't say no. Say yes. Find out where it goes because you never know what's going to spawn from it and what could happen. And it's just, yeah, you don't be afraid out there to chase an intuition or to chase an idea that you got because that's really how most all small businesses start up. And yeah, if you don't have a drive or a dream, yeah. So, but that's awesome. So, do you sell a lot of it like online, or is it just more of like pop up in person type thing?
It's only in person right now. I think eventually I'll do some like white labeling and make my own matcha because I think it's, goes with the business and it will be cute to have my own little branded stuff. But it's interesting. And another thing I wanted to point out about like Miami culture is that everyone thinks of Miami as like partying, clubbing, being up all night, being drunk. And of course, there is that, but there's a huge sober community here, a huge sober scene. There are like just as many sober day parties, coffee parties, like all these wellness events during the day as there are like nighttime events now. And I think that's why it's kind of like reached a fever pitch in this
Oh
whole
yeah.
popularity with matcha. So, and I think that too, like people are realizing they'd rather, even if they're drinking the coffee, like they'd rather be out during the day than like getting drunk at night, being hungover. So even if it's not the matcha, I think like that also is seeing like a change in the culture. But I wanted to touch real quick on what you just said about like following your intuition because I don't have a background in business. I have a background in psychology. I have a background in social work and therapy. And I'm literally learning everything as I go. I'm doing this completely alone. I don't have a business partner. I don't have a romantic partner. Like, I don't have family helping me. It's really just me and my chat GBT out here
There
against the
you
world.
go.
And I think that it's interesting because I've had, like, at one point, I had a couple meetings with this business mentor I was seeing for free. I've had conversations with some other entrepreneurs that are more in like that strategic, linear type of approach. And I'm not discrediting their approach, but I feel like the intuitive entrepreneurship is something that I really enjoyed and gotten like so into as I've gotten further in this process. And I feel like my whole approach that I've described in terms of like health and wellness and life, it really feeds back in because your success as an entrepreneur solely rests on your faith, your ability to be adaptive, your ability to
Hmm.
trust the process, your ability to trust yourself, believe in yourself. No one's telling you what to do. No one's telling you if you're doing it right, if you're doing it well. No one's telling you if you should take this business risk. Is this stupid? Should you like wait to do this? Should you do this sooner? And I have friends that are also entrepreneurs that help guide me a little bit, but it's really just like you doing it on your own. And I think that has been like challenging, but also rewarding. And I think going back to this community piece is I'm really seeking out like more help, more support, more community. I think that will help like, all these businesses grow. But it's been an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah, no, it's and that's how some of the great entrepreneurs end up being. They didn't go in there with the mindset of I'm going to create the biggest business or the greatest business in the world. They had a passion, and a lot of people were in something else. But it's definitely it's also kind of going back on the greater, I think, going back to a core issue of just how we educate the youth in general. I think if a lot of people were educated of like, hey, this is an actual path you can do, follow and your intuition. If you find a product or a need in the community, find a way to fix it. And there's never has there been a time before where you have so much access to so much information and how to do things. I mean, people I don't think realize that just jumping on YouTube and asking it, how do I do this? Or Chat GPT or any of the AIs now, just saying, how can I do this? It comes up with a plethora of information, and it's just up to someone to be self-motivated enough to go, okay, I'm going to follow this and go after it. So I applaud you for that. That's awesome. Keep that rolling. There's so many different paths you can take with that. I mean, right now I can probably talk your ear off of like, what, hey, this is what you need to do next, and get yourself a this, go and get this, start posting here, go da, 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 da. Before you know it, yeah. But ultimately, it comes down to, I think it's way more beneficial and self rewarding to find the path yourself and to figure it out yourself. I'm not saying do everything by yourself, always ask for help and stuff, but I think people, and I think you will find this or attest to this, that it's so much more rewarding when you actually can accomplish something like this and go down that path. And who knows, you could be looking back 10 years from now and it could be a multi-million-dollar company. And you're going, how the hell did I get here? But if you didn't have that drive to take a chance and to explore it, you won't get there in a sense. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps some other people out. Don't be afraid to go after it, especially nowadays. It's who knows what's going to be coming up with this AI and where business is going to be going. And I think personally, if you can find a need in your community, I think that's going to be the most beneficial thing to help everybody out, in a sense of, hey, you found a niche in the community, get out there. And unfortunately, the only way to find a need in the community is you got to go out in the community, go be a part of things. People go to events, get out of your behind the computer or behind the TV or your phone, put it down, set it aside, go out in Mother Nature, have some fun, meet some people.
Yeah.
But
And also, like, this whole concept of entrepreneurship being uncertain, unstable. Look at all the government layoffs we had this year. Nothing is guaranteed, nothing is
oh,
stable. So you could spend your whole career trading your freedom, trading your autonomy, trading your passions for this like so-called security and then be let go with one
yep,
email.
yep,
I feel like people are so, and this of course goes back to so many different things, but people are so tied to their safety and comfort zone that they're just letting their lives pass them by. And I'd rather have like gone out and tried and failed than just wonder like, oh, what if I tried that? Look at all these other people that are doing it. Oh, it's too bad that I didn't try that.
I'm right there with you. I don't want to get later in life and look back with a bunch of regrets. I want to at least look back and say, hey, I tried this. I failed at this. I failed at this. And most things in life are failure, but that's also how you learn and grow. No one's got it completely correct. And if you came out and everything you did was 100% correct, I don't know if life would be worth that much living. I think it's the struggles and the challenges that we put ourselves through that make you the person who you are. And I mean, it sounds like you've gone through a lot and you've gotten a path and been through many different cities and different situations, but it's also given you a great base to start this venture that you're looking to do. And I think you're going to be very successful at it. And it sounds like, and personally, I think, like I've been telling a lot of my clients and kind of my whole business and people that I work with, is I think we're on a cusp of something great. I think people are looking back to more holistic. I think we've gone so far the other way that people are just done with it, and they want to hear something that's actually real and that people can get behind. And I think more holistic healing. I mean, that's why I like, kratom being what it is. It's a natural herb. I'm getting into the beef tallow business of moisturizers and balms, and I think that's just going to do great things down the road. And everybody I've had try it, from psoriasis or skin ailments or issues with their skin, they try this for a couple weeks and they go, wow, it actually went away. My body's healing. I'm like, because
Wow.
it's a holistic thing. It's not some compound made in a lab telling you it's supposed to do this. And I
Yeah.
mean, there's things. I'm not bashing all pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of things that are good, and there's a lot of things in the beauty world that are beneficial. I don't know much on that, but that's just my opinion. I'm kind of a goof when it comes to that. I like more holistic, natural things, and that's just kind of been my thing. But I honestly believe that our culture in this world is more going down that path the more time's gone by. And I think COVID had a big awakening for a lot of people, saying, hey, the appeal to authority and just blind following of people that claim to be authority in these positions is not a good path to be going down, and nothing's come good of it in my opinion. But
Yeah.
well, this I think we've gotten a pretty good podcast. And is there anything else you want to say? How can people find you? How can people get a hold of you, or how can they schedule for a matcha event?
So my holistic wellness business is at Soul Space Holistic Wellness on Instagram. On TikTok, it's at Soul Space Miami. The other one is Matcha Mocktails Miami on both, and I'm sure you'll have show notes somewhere where you can post them.
Yep.
I also have my personal accounts, Alana_Reina. So follow me on all the things. I have a Substack as well under Alana_Reina. So I give updates about both the businesses and kind of like behind the scenes of my life. I just did an Art Basel recap yesterday. So if you prefer that format, like straight to email, that might be for you. But I'm always here if anyone has questions about any of the services I offer or any of the things we talked about. If anyone wants to get deep into one of these, like, metaphysical, philosophical conversations, I'm always down to do that. But I agree. I think that there's a big shift that we're seeing. And I think that as we get into the next year of the horse, I think we're going to start seeing transformation come a lot more quickly. So I'm very excited, and maybe we'll revisit this next December.
Oh no, I would love to revisit it, and I think you're right. I think this upcoming year is going to be one for the record books. I think there's a lot of things that are going to be coming to a head next year, and I think America even turns 250 years old next year. So it's going to be some interesting. And then the World Cup's coming to America. Like, oh boy, we're going to have some. It's going to be some good things going to be happening next year, and I really. I would
I
love
think
to
that's
have a
here, right? In Miami.
yeah,
Are
there's
you
going
going
to
to
be a
come
couple
down?
games in my yes. I'm going to need to. But yeah, I'm sure tickets going to be crazy. But I'm definitely, as soon as I can find out when games are coming, I need to make a trip down there. So if I do
Oh,
come down there, I'm gonna have to look you up and
yeah.
come and
We'll
say
get
hi.
matcha together.
Very good, very good. Well, all right, guys. Well, thank you. That'll be our podcast for today. Thank you for being out there, coming on and
Having me.
explaining your world to us. And we'll look to see you again here in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. This has been The Inspiring Minds with Blissful Botanicals. I hope you enjoyed this episode. To find any of our great products, log on to blissfulbotanicals.shop. I hope to see you again soon. Eyes open, no fear. I'm your host, JR Knopp.